So what's the current status of the Trans-Pacific Partnership?
Well, it looks like it's finally close to being signed. The parties are still hammering out some of their differences, particularly the US and Japan, around market access, some of the trade rules on investment and intellectual property. There's actually a 10-day meeting in train as we speak in Guam, which does suggest that the parties are actually serious about trying to get the deal done. And the breaking news overnight is that some of the domestic hurdles for the US in that regard might be cleared, because the Obama administration has been trying to obtain approval for a fast-track process which would see the TPP going through Congress without amendment once the final deal's done. That has been being blocked by the Senate, but it now does appear that the Democrats and the Republicans are supportive of that fast-track approach, which means that once the deal's done, it should go relatively smoothly through the domestic channels in the US.
So just finally, if the TPP is signed and enters into force here in Australia, how will it affect clients?
Well, it's a little hard to say how the true effect on Australian domestic law, because we haven't actually seen very many of the provisions, and as has been much publicised in the media, the negotiations have largely been conducted in secret. But IP is an exception in as much as we've seen the much publicised release by WikiLeaks of certain draft chapters, and from the text that we've seen in relation to IP, there's certainly a very strong emphasis on really strong IP rights. So, for example, in relation to pharmaceuticals, we see patent protection for new uses of existing chemical compounds, irrespective of enhanced efficacy. We see restrictions on third parties being able to use safety and efficacy data for registered drugs if seeking to register new generic versions of those drugs. And more generally for patents, we see that there are more liberal provisions for extending patent term protection. And a lot of the media concern has been on the potential cost to public health care from those provisions. But in actual fact, a lot of what we've seen in relation to the pharmaceutical area at least is already part of our law. So we'd expect that it's more likely to be some of the less developed countries who are parties to the TPP who would have to make significant changes in that regard. But another area that's certainly attracted a lot of media attention is in relation to the copyright provisions. So a lot of media attention has focused on the measures to prevent illegal downloading of content, such as TV shows and movies. So there we've seen a ban on circumvention of digital locks, potential criminal sanctions for willful infringement on a commercial scale, and a requirement that ISPs monitor the activities of their customers. However, again, in Australia, separate to the TPP, or perhaps indeed inspired by the TPP, there are already some measures in progress which would require ISPs to monitor and collect data on their customers. So basically prevention of copyright infringement online is high on everybody's agenda. But I suppose back to the TPP itself, the sheer breadth of the subject matter as we understand it will certainly, if it enters into force in Australia, will provide lots of opportunities and probably also some challenges for Australian businesses. So they should be following the progress with great interest, as we are.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Sarah, thanks so much for talking us through the latest news on the TPP.
Thanks very much.